On July 9th, 2022, the town of Whiting, Iowa was visited by Children of the Corn film director Fritz Kiersch for the first time since filming in 1983. This was an event sponsored by Kenny Caperton of Myers House, North Carolina, and also featured Children of the Corn historian John Sullivan. What follows here is most of the Q&A conducted by director Fritz Kiersch following the screening of the film in the town square right next to the iconic yellow flagpole.
This movie was filmed in just 1 month. It was filmed in September of '83 through October of '83, and that's all it took. There was a lot of extras in the movie, which some are here. Let's have the extras come up here. The movie was almost, let's see, it was filmed in '83, so it was almost filmed 40 years ago. Does it feel like 40 years ago? No.
We were babies.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Kenny, thank you so much for letting me be here, and I'll give it back to you. And I think we've got one more person that we're going to bring in on this.
Yeah. Director Fritz, here. Let's give it up. I think they want to get a quick picture with you, you don't mind. Yeah. So what we're going to do, you guys, we're going to watch the film, and anyone who wants to stick around, Fritz is going to do kind of an in-depth Q&A, so be thinking about anything you want to ask him. But without further ado, I'm going to let this man right here do an introduction to the film, and then we're going to watch Children of the Corn.
I was really proud of this as my first film. And I went, when I lived in Venice, California, to a theater that was showing the film, and there's the marquee, Children of the Corn. That's me, that's it, I'm it, you know, it's really cool. And it was in the area where there were a lot of second-run movie houses where they would run the film for $1.50 or whatever, and it catered to the retired community of Santa Monica at the time. So I excitedly stood there and I'm thinking, oh, this is really cool. And a woman just walked out, retired woman, came from the theater. And I said, hey, what do you think of this? And she said, oh, it's just awful. It's just awful. These kids with their knives, I don't, and she went on and I thought, oh boy, there goes my career. I'm down the drain. But it made me realize how cool it is to make a film and how to come back here and to see all the things that we just more or less, which we will talk about after we see the film, made up on the day. There was a lot of planning into the film, but we made up a lot of things that made the film work and particularly fit into the community to make it look the way it looks. So I really do hope you enjoy it. I hope you see things in it that you will ask questions about, and we can better define them, but you see things that are familiar, and you see some of our stars that are in it that are here with us tonight, and you just have a good time. I think it's cool. So eat popcorn, let's laugh, and let's giggle at the silly lines that used to be scary. So it'll be cool. So I hope you all enjoy it. Thank you for being here.
We have your woman! She still lives! Outlander, maybe you don't hear so well.
Thank you. I enjoy watching, listening to your responses, your laughter at some of the stupid lines in the movie. She's out cold. I mean, who came up with that? I didn't do it. But in making a film like this, you just hurry and you're not thinking, and you say just to the actor, say this, not thinking that that's what we just saw happen. So it becomes redundant and funny and all those kind of things. But I'd really like to answer any questions you have about what we did, our process, how we made it, how we came here, anything you can think of. After discussing it with the executives, literally about 2 days later, we got in airplanes and we flew around Texas and Indiana and Illinois and came here and met a man who was a film commission man for the state, if there was such a kind of position. And he took us for steak dinner and beer, and we decided we'd come here. Terrific place. I mean, it has everything, as you can see in the film. It has the threat of the corn and the small town, and everybody wanted to help us, and they closed down the town for us and let us run around and put corn stalks everywhere, and it was just, the town was wonderful. So, you know, it's part of the movie.
How about the fire at the end of the movie? Can you talk about how hard it was to film fire? Was that shot on site, or did you use that in LA?
Oh no, that's here, and John Sullivan knows exactly where we burned the cornfield, but that was a purchase. In other words, we bought from the landowner the right to burn the crop. The bomb itself, the explosion that goes up 5 stories, was a request of mine of the special effects people. We'll call them the pyrotechnicians, because they handle this kind of work. And they dig a cylindrical hole in the ground and fill it with trash bags of gasoline. And so we used 50 gallons, I think, of gasoline in trash bags that last for maybe 25 minutes before the gasoline eats the plastics. So it's a very quick process, and you have to wait and wait and wait, and then suddenly, okay, we're ready to go. And stationed around it a number of cameras to capture the different angles. And the idea was we were going to make 2 pops, 2 blow-up, 2 explosions that night, and then let that fire burn and capture the images of the fire burning with other cameras. So it was, for us, the expensive night of the film. A lot of things. And traffic was stopped and people came out to picnic and watch this big fireball go on and all kinds of things, but it was really cold. And so we organized it so that filmically, if you don't move the camera and you stop it, and then you move something that you are photographing, and then you turn the camera on again, it jumps. It just goes boom, it moves. Or because you don't move the camera, it continues as if it happens. So the goal was to do that trick. We'll blow it up twice, never move the cameras, and we'll get 2 explosions that we can superimpose that'll be really big. Well, it was really cold, and the pyrotechnicians thought that brandy was a good idea. And so somehow, between them and the camera guys, the cameras got moved. So in one shot, the explosion goes up this way, and then the second take, the explosion's over here. So you can't really superimpose them. So it was really frustrating. So we hired a man to draw fire on those explosions and the face. And it was terrible. And it's not my fault, you know? And this is before really cool digital stuff was available. So he literally drew on film kind of and did this process, and that's what we ended up with. But we did burn that cornfield, and it was really big. And I'm sure some of you around here know, yeah, it was a nice thing to watch.
Do you remember if that was really John Franklin's voice when he screams as he's burning on the cross?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's his scream?
Yeah, that's really him. The voices that we replaced, this is interesting, I mentioned to Kenny while we were watching the film. The voices we replaced were some of the driving sequence dialogue because it didn't sound good enough for the film, so we had to go into a studio and synchronize the voice with a new re-recording by Peter Horton or Linda Hamilton. And then in a couple of other places. But the voices of the children are done by a group of what they're called loopers. They come into the studio, they're actors, mostly comedians, and they watch the film as we've watched it with microphones set up here, and they choose characters on the screen and they become that character and they do a voice for that character. So you record about 8 people talking, and then you blend that into the background. And if you remember in the cornfield with the kids, to give a sense of society to this group, this culture, I thought it would be really cool that we would have babies, older children, adolescents. So it turned out in the group was Bart Simpson, the voice of Bart Simpson, and she did all the baby voices, all the crying and everything in the film. This was before she had Bart Simpson. The earth moving is just me walking around being the god that I am, you know? Does that sound wrong? Should I say that? I'm kidding. So we're out in the cornfield, and the challenge is to come up with something scary, and I have no damn idea what would be cool for the monster. And every night I would think, how can we make this monster? Because I told them that I can make a monster out of the air and the space and the things around us. And I really didn't know. And standing in a farmer's, I shouldn't say farmer's, but on a farm, I saw a wheelbarrow and a tractor. And I thought, there's the idea. Let's take the wheelbarrow apart and use it upside down, the hump of the metal, and we'll dig a trench and build like a train track out of wood and weld wheels on the wheelbarrow, and then tie cable to it and run it down into a pulley on the ground, and then run the pulley over and tie it to the tractor. So the tractor would take off, and the track went like this, and then it went up, and then traveled, and then it went back down. And the hump of the metal upside down wheelbarrow created that movement. So there is plastic over the trench and vermiculite soil on top of that. And so that gave it this whole kind of wave action, and it cost about $1 to make. So I was real happy, and I thought it turned out great. And I would say that the distance of the wheelbell trough was from me to you. It wasn't very long. And we used different angles to make it look like he ran 100 yards. So it was cool. This is kind of fun. Courtney came in, and as you're familiar with the process of making film, you talk with a lot of actors and you do auditions. And so they come in, and usually the process is we just talk. Because I'd like to see what you are like as a regular person before you take on a character portrayal and you start to act. So some actors come in prepared and they don't want to talk to you and they want to just do the reading. They want to play the scene out with whomever. And in this case, Jeff Greenberg, the casting associate, would read one part of the scene, and the actor auditioning would read their side of the scene, it's called. And Courtney came in, and he had the long, scraggly red hair, and he was intense, and he just like he just pulled hubcaps off a Chevy. He was so pissed. It was really cool. And the producer wanted to chat with him, so we immediately stopped talking to him, just let him do his work, because he's all intense. And Jeff, I think it was the scene in the film where Malachi challenges Isaac. You're a non-believer, I'm going to take you out, and gets angry and pulls a weapon on him, and they start to struggle in a power struggle kind of thing. And so Jeff is close to him as we are doing the scene, and Courtney out of nowhere pulled out a machete about this big and whipped it up on his neck, and Jeff just, that's it, I quit this business. These people are crazy. I'm out of here. I'm done. I won't do this anymore. He was furious. And I said, wow, Courtney's great. He gets the role. This is really good. You know? Violence against casting people is kind of one of my mantras. But he was genuinely just in tune with everything. He had been trained as an actor who believes in a certain process, and so he brought it to the audition in a very strong, really convincing manner. So it was neat. Not agriculturists, is that the right word? So we came to look at Iowa and chose it in July, and then came back in September and went, oh wow, it dies. They harvest this stuff. Where did it go? And so the challenge really was every day finding the sea of corn that was green enough for us to photograph as a background, or in which we photographed. And we found that one side of the street would be green and the other side was gone. It had been harvested, and literally in 2 days. So each night it was almost like a joke. What's the corn check today? Oh, well, tomorrow's location's gone. We'll have to send somebody out to find a new place. So what can we do in exchange for what we had planned to do on that day? So that was really the big eye-opener. Don't kill what? Oh, no, isn't that stupid? I mean, who did that? I had nothing to do. I wasn't even there that week. I would never, no animals were hurt in the making of this film except a dog. I mean, that was, the death of the dog purely was for the emotional impact on an audience. Let's make this man sympathetic. If he loses his best friend and it's a dog, everybody will think that the children are awful. So he wrote a script, but he is a novelist and he's not a screenwriter. It's a completely different type of writing, completely different. And no one cared for what he wrote. And so he eventually got to Hal Roach, the man who started the Little Rascals, who had this idea at his age, 80 so, that he would reinvent the Little Rascals and this film would do it. Let's make the Little Rascals mean. So he tried to sell that, and the group at New World said, this is an interesting idea, but we don't want Stephen King and we don't want Hal Roach, so let's buy them out. So they paid them not to participate in the film and hired George Goldsmith, the ultimate screenwriter, the eventual screenwriter, I think, and he then compromised the story to make it good. And I sat with him and the producer over on Saturday and Sunday, and we took these giant scissors that were about this long that you use on fabric, and with one swipe you could cut the width of a page of paper, and we just went in and we chopped that out, and we chopped that out, we took that section, we pasted it next to another with Scotch tape on a piece of paper, and we built the script basically a combination of what George had figured out and how to stretch it and bring this idea of the relationship between the heroes not working very well and the little kids having their own storylines and the Stephen King original idea. So it was really a quilt, is what it came from. No, not at all. He wrote a letter that I got to see 6 months after the film came out, saying this is awful. Again, I think he knew the woman in the theater. But he was not very appreciative of the work that we did to his original idea, and I completely understand it because it's really predicated, his opinion's predicated or motivated by this disregard that he got from Hollywood.
Been There, Shot That is a Lock 22 production, and we would love for you to subscribe.